This message is transforming lives and organisations from the inside out, person by person and cell by living cell. Remember, you can change your DNA.
You've been involved in a lot of businesses.
Yes.
And I know you're involved with Girdless. Ryan's here, which just quietly is fantastic coffee, mate. Quick plug for you. It is. I'm a coffee Nazi. Best coffee in the Northern Beaches, just quietly.
Yes, yes,
but
that's right.
You've been involved with a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
Has there been one in particular where the change has been so significant that it's just blown you away, where you've seen this, what you're talking about, firsthand, that you're just going, oh, wow.
Yeah. And I'm free to talk about it. There's a company, it was started by a man called Martin Sellies. Does anyone remember, what was their catch line? Thank you, Anne-Marie. Excellent. Their catch line was, if it's Sellies, it works. And that was on all of it. Does anyone remember that on the tubes? Yeah. And so, in fact, it was Martin Ward, after this 2 or 3 year assignment, that introduced us to Camp Quality in the evolution of things there. So anyway, Martin Ward was 33 years old. He was the youngest CEO in the family of I think it was Orica, that owns all those companies. Anyway, and it was started by Martin Sellies. It was 70 years on. He'd passed away. And the company was going along with the mantra, well, if it's Sellies, it works. So as soon as they put Sellies on anything marketing, it would work. But what they didn't realise that out there there was other information. So they were operating under the misinformation that if they did anything, it would always be good.
Sure.
So therefore, their apathy that grew into their, and this is their words, not mine, that grew into their product design and new product information didn't really get incubated. Therefore, their agenda was not dominant and it wasn't optimised. It was a survival and a winning agenda. Hey, we're good, everything we do is good. So they decided to challenge that, because one of their best products, Aquadeer, was being absolutely ripped through the competition that was being made overseas and brought in. So they were going to rip all their plants out and send them overseas, do a whole bunch of things. So what they did before they did all that, and the unions again were justifiably concerned about all this change, and the beliefs weren't collective. So they went away and they incubated. They did actually one of our Nimboida trips. We did 2 or 3 days on the Nimboida River and scaled the mountains and all those sorts of things. And they came away and said, you know what, we have got the wrong attitude towards what our dominant thought. They got the whole message about the DNA and their RAS and as the corporate sense. So I don't want to mess up my messages. I'm not talking about the personal RAS, but inside an organisation, there's also a dominant thought. There's a unsaid soul in the organisation that's driving every strategy, or by design or by default. In their case, it was by default, and that's one of the chapters in the book. You can have a strategy, but is it a default strategy? In other words, the one you just do because you haven't got one, or is there a design strategy? And so they had a default strategy. It's Sellies, it works. We've been doing it for 70 years. It's okay. So I reminded them of the Swiss watches, and I'll come back to their story in a minute, but anyone that's wearing a watch today, I don't think anyone winds a watch, but back in 1968, the Swiss dominated the world of watches, and I told them this story. Yeah. And the Swiss, they had like 45,000 watchmakers, and it was very expensive to own a watch. You didn't wear a watch until you were a certain age, and the gold watch when you left a company, all that sort of stuff. So a couple of technicians came to a conference in 1968 in Switzerland and showed them, and I was telling them this story, showed them what they thought the future of watches was, and it was digital watches and mechanisms. And they laughed them out of the conference, said, this is never going to work. We know what we're doing. We've been building watches with jewels and bearings and mainsprings. You remember the mainspring in the watch? Yeah. Anyone ever seen one? I took one out of my father's watch once, and he wasn't very happy. I could never get it back in. So the old bearing and mainspring and all that sort of watches was gone, and everyone knows if you didn't wind your watch on time, it would lose time or make you late and all those sorts of things. So they decided that this was rubbish. So the two technicians decided to put their technology on display, and 2 companies walked past, and one of those companies was a little company in Japan called Seiko. These technicians, they were Swiss, so sure of the Swiss population of watchmaking that this would never work, they didn't even put a patent on it.
Wow.
So their belief system blinded them to the reality that people wanted cheaper timekeeping and they wanted it to be accurate.
Yeah.
So Seiko of Japan took the technology, and in 4 years, 37,000 Swiss watchmakers were out of work.
Wow.
And Seiko Japan took the Swiss nation, which had 82% of the watchmaking manufacturing facilities in the world down to 12%.
In 4 years.
In 4 years.
That's nuts.
It is. So that's what beliefs can do.
Yeah, right.
You know, one way or the other. So getting back to my story, so they changed. We need to, Selly said, we need to rebuild the power in our brand. And the word power, they derived it down to 5 key things they needed to do. Bring the unions on site, fix up our manufacturing, don't take anything for granted, research our product innovations more effectively. And that company turned around a $30 million loss within about 3 years to about a $40 million EBIT return on investment. And that's Selly's Chemicals. And Martin Wood couldn't be here tonight, but he was the CEO of that company, has become a dear friend since.
Wow.
So that's a true story.
Amazing. Yeah.